Huge holes in the ground, sunken cars, destroyed houses, and dozens of deaths. After the flood disaster in Western Germany, people are faced with the ruins of their livelihoods. The extent is becoming clearer and clearer. Brown and oily water pours from a street into a huge gorge in Erfstadt, not far from Cologne. The road is simply broken off. The houses are partly collapsed. A white curtain is still swaying in the wind. Almost halfway through it is brown, a silent testimony to the dramatic hours in which the flood rolled through the Blessem district. The flood disaster in Western Germany brings chaos, devastation, and suffering. Its exact extent cannot yet be estimated, but one thing is clear: at least 135 people have lost their lives in North Rhine-Westphalia and Rhineland-Palatinate, and more than 600 were injured. It is feared that the numbers will continue to rise. Numerous people are missing. Many others are faced with the ruins of their very existence. In Erfstadt, houses are swept away and disappear. It was unclear how many victims there were until Friday evening. The situation was extremely confusing. The flood came quickly, says District Administrator Frank Rock from the Christian Democrats. There was hardly any time to warn people. Landslides of enormous proportions can be seen from the air. It's a catastrophic situation like we've never had before, says the District Administrator. Karl Berger stands in front of the house where he was born, only a few steps away from the edge of the demolition. He struggles for composure. This huge hole, he says, then his voice drops. He knows a lot of people who lived there. On Thursday, the Erft, actually a nice small river, swelled steadily. The rescue work is difficult. People are rescued by boats from the water. The situation is confusing. According to TV reports, some residents are shouting to try to attract rescuers. He still has no concrete number of fatalities yet or missing, says Rock, and nearby parts of the closed Autobahn 1 plunge into the river. More than 20 cities and districts in North Rhine-Westphalia are affected by floods. The Ruhrtalsperre had started to overflow around midnight due to the immense amount of rain. At least there is some all clear here. The Eifel-Ruhr Water Association speaks of a low dynamic. North Rhine-Westphalia's Prime Minister Armin Laschet says the dams in North Rhine-Westphalia, with the exception of the Steinbach Dam, are stable and undamaged. The dam threatens to break through at the Steinbach Dam in the Euskirchen district. Several villages in the area of the lake were therefore evacuated. Laschet speaks of a flood disaster of historic proportions. It is to be feared that the number of victims will continue to rise. The floods literally pulled the ground away from under the feet of many people. The pictures make the power of the forces of nature clear. Where there was a shopping street, a river suddenly flows. Vehicles lie in the landscape like toys tossed around. Some houses are half washed away like houses of cards or have disappeared. Many households are still without electricity, places cannot be reached, and rail traffic is extremely restricted. In many places in Rhineland-Palatinate, the cleanup work has begun. People cleared their belongings from the mud. The horror in the country is great. The suffering never ends, said the Rhineland-Palatinate Prime Minister Malu Dreyer from the Social Democrats when visiting the control center of the Professional Fire Brigade in Trier on Friday morning. Since the water is receding everywhere, people are now found who drowned in the disaster. And then you could really only cry, that's a horror, says Dreyer. At least 65 victims are to be mourned in the Ahr Valley, which are particularly hard hit by the flood disaster. Helicopters and boats are still on the move, rescuing people. The helpers repeatedly find dead people in the brown waters and rescue them. In Sinzig, for example, 12 residents of a facility for disabled people can no longer save themselves and die. The water reached the ceiling of the ground floor within a minute, says the managing director of the Landesverband der Lebenshilfe, Rhineland-Palatinate, Matthias Mandos. The night watch still managed to bring several residents to the first floor of the dormitory on the Ahr. When he wanted to get the next one, it was already too late. Thousands of helpers are out and about in both countries. Other federal states send support. Around 900 soldiers are helping to cope with the flood disaster. Helicopters, clearing tanks, ambulances, boats, troop transport tanks and a ferry are used. The Technische Hilfswerk has a total of more than 2,000 helpers in both federal states. They save people, evacuate buildings and hand out sandbags. After all, the water levels fell in some places. It indicated a slight relaxation. The federal government also promised help to those affected. Federal President Frank-Walter Steinmeier wants to visit the areas. The disaster stunned him, he says. In his thoughts, he was with the bereaved of the victims. Your fate hits me in the heart, he said. The Chancellor candidate of the Greens, Annalena Baerbock, was concerned. She wrote on Twitter, "Today I was in Rhineland-Palatinate. The conversations get under your skin. As before, not all places have been reached, people are further cut off. At the same time, there is an unbelievable solidarity in helping those affected to be taken in and closed at home support. The situation in Erfstadt remains tense. The dams have to hold, and then it has to be cleaned up. Karl Berger says that in a pond further back there used to be a good 20 koi carp of impressive length swimming, until all the water came. We have now found 5 of them again, he says. They have to start again somewhere." And because there were many questions, especially on my big channel, we had a lot of rain here too for a short time that day, but all that happened is was that I got wet, so don't worry. But I know in parts what is happening there at the moment, because in 2014 we had such a big rain here in my hometown with hundreds of millions of damage here, that I can imagine how those people feel. Unfortunately, we had deaths here too in 2014, and it was quite devastating. So I can a little bit feel into what the people are going through, just to let you know, because we experienced something not as extreme as there, but similar here. And so the people here in Münster, where I am, we can definitely feel with the people in Erfstadt and the Aachen area and so on. Our fire brigades have sent a lot of people down there too to help, and some of our top people in the city are affected as well. One of the top administrators here comes from one of the villages that's completely flooded, and his birth house, as far as I got it, is destroyed as well. So it is a terrible situation. And of course, the discussion about climate change will start now again. But right in the situation, it's the wrong moment to make these discussions. That's why I cited people from all parties in this video. It's not time for party politics. It is time to help. And I'm so glad and grateful to especially our voluntary firemen and women who went down there immediately and to help. We are not fully staffed here now because of that. We will be able to cope with that, and they need the help down there. So thanks to all our firemen and women who are down there, everyone from the Technische Hilfswerk, every volunteer helping there. And I'll see you in my next video. I hope with a more positive video. Bis gleich.